by Russia in the wake of President Trump's decision to cut off U.S. military aid and intelligence support to Kyiv. Today in Washington, critics of those moves unfurled a giant Ukrainian flag on the ellipse outside the White House. The latest Russian attacks in Ukraine targeted homes and infrastructure. CBS's MTS Tayeb reports.
This residential building was gutted in the attack, which also saw several vehicles torched and left a trail of smoldering debris, following the wave of Russian drone and ballistic missile strikes on the town of Dobropilya in the eastern Kharkiv region. At least 25 people were killed and many more were wounded. We are all hostages of this situation, this local resident said. We can't do anything. Civilians are dying. The southern port city of Odessa was also targeted overnight. The intense wave of Kremlin attacks came just 24 hours after the U.S. suspended some satellite imagery and intelligence sharing with Ukraine. And only days after the Trump administration announced it had halted billions in weapons shipments to the country. A rapid and dramatic shift in U.S. support for the war that had one Ukrainian military commander say they were now left to fight blind. MTS Tayeb, CBS News, Warsaw.
Tonight, the U.S. economy is suddenly on shaky footing. The Trump administration calls it, quote, a detox period as it overhauls the federal government with layoffs, funding cuts, and new tariffs. For markets, though, it's bruising. The S&P notching its third week of losses. CBS's Ali Bauman is on Wall Street with details. Ali, good evening.
Good evening, Tarika. The administration's flip-flop on tariffs this week is another catalyst of economic uncertainty, and analysts say investors are losing faith by the day. A turbulent week on Wall Street, scary swings in the stock market, ultimately making it the worst weekly decline in 6 months. Moody's chief economist Mark Zandi says inconsistent economic policies from the White House are to blame.
It's called stroke of the pen risk. It's the on again, off again tariffs that are just driving business people and investors crazy.
Tariff whiplash and stubborn inflation are weighing on consumers as well. Last month, consumer confidence had its largest monthly decline since August of 2021, all of it stressing industries from automotive to agriculture.
I feel like once the prices go up, they're never going to come back down.
President Trump has insisted temporary pain will lead to long-term gain. Economists aren't so sure.
I think investors are coming to the realization, no, this trade war is here to stay. And the longer it is, the more damage it's going to do to businesses, their earnings, the economy, and to stock prices.
And the tariffs President Trump enacted in his first term were much narrower, negatively impacting farmers and manufacturing. This time around, these tariffs are on a much larger scale, affecting more than $1.3 trillion in goods. Sharika?
Ali Bauman for us on Wall Street, thank you. There is no end to the tariff war with Canada. President Trump is now taking aim at dairy and lumber imports, but Canada is fighting back. CBS's Ed O'Keefe is in the capital of Ottawa tonight with the latest on the tumultuous trade war. Ed.
Tarika, those latest threats add to just mounting anger across this country, not directed at the American people so much as the American president. With boos and boycotts, Canadians are voicing their displeasure with President Trump. They're not amused by his punishing tariffs or aggressive taunts.
So I think Canada is going to be a very serious contender to be our 51st state.
Not a snowball's chance in hell.
In grocery stores, many Canadian consumers have become patriotic patrons.
I decided not to buy a couple of products in there today because they were from the U.S.
At liquor stores, too. Anything American is cleared out. It's a big shift for a country that bought almost $350 billion in U.S. goods last year. The U.S. is also the top travel destination for Canadians, with 20.4 million visits in 2024 for work or vacation. And some may be offloading their vacation homes.
I love going to the U.S. I spend a lot of time there.
But now you're curtailing that.
Yeah, no.
All in direct response to what President Trump is up to.
Basically,
Yes.
yeah. Yes.
Starting Monday, the Premier of Ontario is moving ahead with his own tariffs on electricity sold to millions of Americans south of the border.
It's an economic war, and that he's declared on his closest friends. And for what reason?
There's change even in cafes. The owner of this Toronto spot joined the trend-sweeping coffee shops in Canada, renaming Americanos to Canadianos. In a land where hockey is king, they're dropping the gloves. On Saturday Night Live, Mike Myers mouthing the words "elbows up" twice. Even the actor in a classic Canadian beer commercial has reprised his role as Joe Canada. But for Canadians, it's no joke.
The excuse that he's giving for these Paris tariffs today of fentanyl is completely bogus. What he wants is to see a total collapse of the Canadian economy, because that'll make it easier to annex us.
Ed O'Keefe joining us live now in Ottawa. Ed, tomorrow we know that Justin Trudeau, the Canadian Prime Minister, his time ends there. Who next is the President of the United States expected to deal with?
Yeah, so remember, Trudeau announced in January he'd be stepping down after nearly a decade, and tomorrow members of his party are getting together to name a successor who then picks up this tariff fight. The leading contender is a guy named Mark Carney, an economist who once led the central banks of Canada and Britain. The other contender is a woman named Chrystia Freeland, who used to work with Trudeau. Whoever wins becomes prime minister in the coming days, and we'll have to call a general election by October. Tarika?
All right, Ed O'Keefe, thank you so much. Tonight, President Trump is backing a House Republican plan to avert a government shutdown next week. He's also playing down reports of infighting between some of his cabinet members and advisor Elon Musk. CBS's Nicole Killian is in West Palm Beach with the details. Nicole, good evening to you.
Hey, good evening, Jarika. Tonight, President Trump continues to insist that Elon Musk and his Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, have a great relationship, and he says anything to the contrary is false.
President Trump returned to his Mar-a-Lago resort after leaving the White House for the weekend with Elon Musk not far from his side. The special government employee is now at the center of an explosive meeting Thursday night, according to the New York Times. Musk clashed with several Trump officials, including Secretary of State Marco Rubio, over the Department of Government Efficiency to cut federal spending.
Elon gets along great with Marco, and they're both doing a fantastic job. There is no clash.
The president and Musk tamped down tensions, with Musk calling it a very productive meeting. But earlier in the week, the tech titan faced a mixed reception on Capitol Hill, with some lawmakers urging him to pump the brakes on massive agency cuts after facing backlash back home.
Have you been getting a lot of calls to your office about some of these cuts?
From both sides, yes. I mean, people that have questions, that have concerns, also people that are happy with what's been found.
Since Doge's creation, more than 28,000 federal employees have been terminated, according to a CBS News tracker. Fearing they could be next, some workers attended a job fair Saturday outside of the nation's capital.
Many of us may be fired illegally. We're still going to have to pay the bills.
As Doge looks to streamline parts of the federal government, CBS News has learned that the Department of Health and Human Services has granted access to some Doge associates to a child support database that contains sensitive income information. Jarika?
Nicole Killian, thanks. Tonight, a new health update for Pope Francis. The Vatican says he is, quote, showing gradual slight improvement. The 88-year-old has been in the hospital for 23 days battling double pneumonia.